The House Ethics Committee has officially opened an investigation into New York Congressman George Santos. In a statement, the committee said it would investigate a slew of allegations against Santos, including potential campaign violations, conflicts of interest, and one allegation of sexual misconduct. It is the latest in a series of local, state, and federal investigations surrounding the Republican. He is facing bipartisan calls to step down after he admitted to lying about his background and experience. He briefly responded to the probe on Twitter, writing in the third person, quote, "Congressman George Santos is fully cooperating. There will be no further comment made at this time." Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Dan Goldman of New York. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee, and he hand-delivered the ethics complaint to Santos's office back in January. And Congressman Dan, curious what the goal of this complaint is.
Well, the goal of the complaint is to open an investigation, which I'm very encouraged that the House Ethics Committee has done on a unanimous bipartisan basis. They will now dig into all of the financial red flags surrounding George Santos's campaign, including where he got more than $700,000 that he donated personally to his campaign. So we're optimistic that the Ethics Committee will move very quickly and expeditiously in this investigation. And I'm very glad to see that George Santos says he will cooperate. That cooperation means that he will need to turn over all the documents underlying his own entity that he created that funneled money to himself, as well as where the $700,000 came from.
So, Congressman, for constituents of George Santos, those who might believe that he shouldn't be a sitting member of Congress and would like to see him out of there, what in the complaint could lead to actual ouster or him forcing him to step down? Is there anything in there that goes beyond he just lied about, a dog or something? Is there something substantial in the complaint that could lead to action?
Well, you raise the issue of his constituents who are in a nearby district of mine in New York, and I've been in touch with many of them, and they are furious that George Santos deceived them and that they effectively have no representation in Congress. Congressman Richie Torres and I filed this complaint focusing exclusively on his campaign finances and financial disclosures, because at this point, all of his lies about his background, his education, his employment, all that stuff does not violate law. It is morally corrupt, but it does not violate campaign finance law, or campaign law, rather. And so that's why the complaint focuses exclusively on his financial representations, because there are very strict laws about the financial disclosures that we all must file under oath, as well as campaign finance rules and laws.
Congressman, you're also a member of the subcommittee that was launched by Republicans to dig into what they call the weaponization of the federal government. Republicans promised the panel was going to uncover massive bias against conservatives across the federal government, but they were reportedly left scrambling to save their narrative after the first interview with witnesses went off the rails. The New York Times reporting the three witnesses had little firsthand knowledge of any actual wrongdoing, citing Democrats on the panel. The paper writes instead, the trio appears to have been a group of aggrieved former FBI officials who have trafficked in right-wing conspiracy theories, including about the January 6th attack at the Capitol, and they received financial support from a top ally of former President Donald Trump. The roster of witnesses whose interviews and statements are detailed in a 316-page report compiled by Democrats that was obtained by the Times suggests that Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, the chairman of the panel, has also relied on people who don't meet the definition of a whistleblower and who have engaged in partisan conduct that calls into question their credibility. NBC News hasn't viewed or obtained the above report. In a statement, a spokesman for Jordan called the Democrats' report disappointing and said the Democrats on the panel, quote, vowed to fight our oversight tooth and nail. I mean, it doesn't sound like there's any oversight to fight tooth and nail, because once again, with this Republican Party, there's just no there there. Tell us about it, Congressman.
That's right. I mean, it increasingly seems like the Republicans are engaged in a scheme to deceive the committee and the American public by claiming that the FBI is out to get conservatives, when in reality, they have put together a group of fringe conspiracy theorists who are backed and supported and paid by a top ally of Donald Trump in order to funnel through this committee allegations that are completely unsupported. We've heard a lot, as you know, about these dozens of whistleblowers that Republican staff members have secretly met with. It's clear they don't meet the whistleblower standard, and they have provided no information about all those meetings to the Democrats. So it is very curious and suspicious how they cultivated these witnesses, whether there was any coaching, and ultimately they seem to crumble in their interviews when Democratic staff very deftly question them on their own bias.